Welcome to my channel.
And this is English Podcast Station.
All right, so you're starting out with IELTS prep,
Yeah.
and you look at like everything you have to learn.
Oh, yeah.
It can be kind of daunting. Like,
It can be a lot,
Yeah.
especially as a beginner.
yeah, and you know,
Just starting out.
especially for all the beginners out there,
Yeah.
just looking at it and thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to do all of this?
Right.
I have to learn how to do the reading, the writing, the listening, the speaking.
It's overwhelming.
So yeah, that's why we're diving deep into motivation for IELTS preparation.
Yeah, specifically for beginners.
For beginners, exactly.
I think it's a very common experience
Yeah.
to feel overwhelmed when you're starting out with IELTS.
Especially because it's such a high stakes exam.
It
For
is.
so many people, it's the key to their future.
For a lot of people, it's a life changer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we've gone through some great resources,
Yeah, we found some really practical strategies.
easy to understand.
Very approachable.
Yeah, that's what we always aim for.
Right. To make it accessible for everybody.
Yeah, because motivation is so important.
It really is the foundation.
And we all struggle with it sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
So
Everyone does.
we're going to explore all kinds of things, like what actually drives us,
Right.
how to set up a good study space.
Which I think a lot of people overlook.
Yeah,
Is so crucial.
because you can be so easily distracted,
Oh, yeah.
especially now.
Especially nowadays.
Yeah, with everything going on, our phones.
Social media.
We're going to talk about
Oh,
support systems.
Having a supportive network.
Because you need people,
Can't do it alone.
can't do it alone.
Yeah.
And then also taking care of yourself.
Mental and physical well-being.
It's all connected, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And then some tried and tested motivation techniques
Techniques that have worked for other people.
that work.
You know, real strategies.
Yeah. And we want to make sure we're giving tips for beginners,
Yeah. Specifically for people just starting out.
right? Because sometimes you can get all this advice and it's like, well, that's great if you're already like a few months in,
Right. If you've already got some momentum.
but we're talking about the very beginning,
Yeah, that initial spurt.
how to get started and keep going.
The hardest part.
Yeah, so our goal here is to take away this idea of motivation being some mysterious force,
To demystify it.
to make it actionable, break it down into little steps that
Exactly.
you can use right away.
Practical advice.
So like a beginner's guide to staying engaged
a roadmap to motivation.
and enthusiastic,
Exactly.
because we want you to be enthusiastic about this.
we want you to enjoy the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's just dive in and talk about what motivation even is.
Right. Let's get to the basics.
What are we even talking about here?
Right. What is motivation?
So what are the fundamental things we need to understand?
Well, I think the starting point is to understand the different types of motivation.
Okay.
And, you know, we often talk about two main types,
Okay.
intrinsic and extrinsic.
All right. So intrinsic and extrinsic motivation.
Right.
For those of us who maybe haven't heard those terms before, can you break those down for us?
Absolutely. So intrinsic motivation is what comes from within you.
Okay.
It's the things you do because you find them enjoyable
Okay.
or interesting or personally fulfilling.
Got it.
So in the context of IELTS, this could be that you actually enjoy learning English
Yeah.
or improving your English.
Maybe you like the feeling of being able to understand a movie without subtitles.
Yes. Or reading a book and not having to look up every other word.
Exactly.
Or it could be even deeper, like you're excited about the possibilities that a good IELTS score will open up.
Oh, okay. So it's not just about the language itself. It's about what that language enables you to do.
Exactly. It's about the bigger picture.
That's really interesting.
It's about connecting with other cultures
Yeah.
or traveling the world,
Studying abroad.
maybe getting your dream job.
Yeah.
The things that really excite you.
So that's intrinsic motivation.
That's intrinsic. It comes from within.
Okay. And what about extrinsic?
So extrinsic motivation comes from external factors.
Okay.
It's more about the rewards you're aiming for
Okay.
or the consequences you're trying to avoid.
Okay. So give us some examples.
So for IELTS, extrinsic motivation might be getting into the university you want
Right.
or getting a promotion at work.
Or immigrating to a new country.
Exactly. Things that are driven by external factors.
So it's like intrinsic is I want to do this,
I want to learn.
and extrinsic is I have to do this.
I need this score.
Okay, I see the difference.
Right.
So both are important, right?
They both play a role.
But you're saying intrinsic motivation is maybe a little bit more powerful in the long run.
I think so, especially for something like IELTS, which requires sustained effort.
Yeah, because if you're only doing it because you have to, it's going to feel like a burden after a while.
Exactly. It's not going to be sustainable.
So for our listeners who are just starting out, what are some practical first steps they can take to tap into that intrinsic motivation?
Well, I think a really important first step is to set achievable goals.
Okay, that makes sense.
Instead of focusing on that final score, break it down into smaller, more manageable steps.
Okay, like what kinds of steps?
It could be something as simple as I'm going to learn 10 new vocabulary words every day.
Okay.
Or I'm going to do one listening practice test this week.
Yeah, small, achievable goals.
Exactly, because even those small wins can give you a sense of accomplishment.
And that feeling of accomplishment motivates you to keep going.
It's a positive cycle.
I see. So it's like a snowball effect. So
Exactly.
you start small and it builds momentum.
And it keeps you moving forward.
That's really helpful.
And another important thing is to really figure out your why.
Oh, okay.
Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why is this IELTS score important to me?
Yeah, what's the bigger picture here?
Exactly.
So I guess it's taking some time for some self-reflection
Yeah, just a few minutes to think about what you really want to achieve.
and how this IELTS score fits into that.
Exactly.
And once you have that why, that becomes your driving force.
It becomes your anchor.
Okay, that's really powerful.
It is.
Now, what about procrastination?
Procrastination.
Because I think everyone struggles with that.
Everyone does. It's a universal challenge.
So how can beginners especially tackle that?
Well, I think one of the best ways to overcome procrastination is to break down those big tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Oh, okay.
So instead of thinking I have to study for 3 hours, think I'm just going to focus on this one reading passage for 25 minutes.
Okay.
It makes it seem less daunting.
Yeah, less overwhelming.
And sometimes just getting started is the hardest part.
Yeah, once you get going, it's easier to keep going.
Exactly. The momentum builds.
Have you heard of the Pomodoro technique?
Oh, yeah.
That's something that a lot of people use to stay focused.
It's a very effective technique.
Can you explain that a little bit for people who haven't heard of it?
Yeah, so the Pomodoro technique is basically working in intervals. So
Okay.
you set a timer for 25 minutes
Mm-hmm.
and you work on a specific task without any distractions.
Okay.
And then you take a 5-minute break
Okay.
and then you repeat that cycle.
So it's like a built-in brake system.
Yeah, it helps you stay focused and avoid burnout.
And I think it makes it feel less overwhelming knowing that you only have to focus for 25 minutes at a time.
Right. It breaks down those big tasks into manageable chunks.
Yeah.
Which, as we've already talked about, is a great way to combat procrastination.
Exactly.
And another thing that can be really helpful is to create a dedicated study space.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that.
Because your environment can have a huge impact on your motivation.
It really can. I mean, if you're trying to study in a chaotic environment,
With distractions everywhere,
yeah, with a TV on, with your phone buzzing,
you're not going to be able to focus.
it's impossible.
It's setting yourself up for failure.
So what are some tips for setting up a productive study space?
Well, the first thing is to find a quiet space.
Okay, somewhere you can really concentrate.
Yeah, and make it comfortable.
Yeah, you don't want to be uncomfortable while you're studying.
Right, because that's just another distraction.
And good lighting is important.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to strain your eyes.
And have all your materials organized.
Everything you need within reach.
Textbooks, notebooks, pens, pencils.
Your computer, if you're using one.
Your phone, but maybe on silent mode.
Or even better, in another room.
Yeah, to minimize those distractions.
Yeah, because every time you get a notification, it breaks your focus.
And it takes time to get back into that flow state.
Exactly.
So having a dedicated study space is like setting the stage for success.
It's creating the right environment for learning.
Now, we've talked about our internal motivation, our physical space. What about the people around us?
The support system.
The support system, because I think that's something that people maybe don't think about as much.
But it's so important,
But it's so crucial.
especially when you're starting out.
Yeah, because you're going to have the moments of doubt.
You're going to have those days where you just don't feel like studying.
You're going to want to give up.
Yeah, and that's when you need people to encourage you.
So what are some ways that beginners can build a supportive network?
Well, one great way is to find a study partner.
Okay, someone who's also preparing for the IELTS.
Yeah, or even a small study group.
Oh, okay.
And you can find these online or in person.
Yeah, there are lots of online communities.
Facebook groups, language exchange apps.
You can find people who are in the same boat as you.
Who are going through the same challenges.
And you can support each other.
You can share tips and resources.
Practice together.
Just encourage each other to keep going.
That's really valuable.
It is.
What about mentorship?
Mentorship is another great option.
So finding someone who's already taken the IELTS.
And achieved the score they wanted.
Or maybe an experienced English tutor.
Yeah, someone who can give you guidance and feedback.
And maybe help you avoid some common mistakes.
Exactly.
And I think it's really helpful to have someone who's been there and done that.
Who can tell you it's possible.
And who can give you some insider tips.
Absolutely.
Now, what about online communities?
Online communities can be a great resource.
Like forums, social media groups.
Yeah, you can ask questions.
Get advice.
Share your experiences.
Connect with other test takers from all over the world.
It's a global support system.
And it's accessible 24/7.
Exactly.
Now, let's not forget about the people in our everyday lives.
Our family and friends.
They can be a huge source of support too.
Absolutely.
So it's important to talk to them about your IELTS goals.
Explain why it's important to you.
And ask for their understanding.
And their support.
Maybe you need some quiet time to study.
Or maybe you just need someone to listen to you vent.
Or maybe you just need some words of encouragement.
It all helps.
It really does.
And I think it's important to be mindful of who you surround yourself with.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Because negativity can be contagious.
It can really drag you down.
So try to spend time with people who are positive and supportive.
People who believe in you.
People who lift you up.
Exactly.
And avoid the people who bring you down.
Yeah, the energy vampire.
Exactly.
So we've covered intrinsic motivation, setting up a good study space, building a support system. Now let's talk about well-being.
Okay.
Because you can have all the motivation in the world.
But if you're not taking care of yourself,
it's not going to matter.
You're going to burn out.
So how does mental and physical well-being impact our ability to stay motivated?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that if you're not feeling well,
yeah,
if you're stressed,
if you're exhausted,
you're not going to be able to focus on your study.
It's going to be really hard to find that motivation.
It's just not going to happen.
So what are some easy things that beginners can do to prioritize their well-being?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to manage stress.
Okay, because IELTS prep can be stressful.
It can be very stressful.
Especially if you feel like a lot is riding on it.
Exactly.
So what are some ways to manage stress?
Well, there are a lot of different techniques,
yeah,
but even something as simple as taking a few deep breaths can help to calm your nervous system.
Yeah, just taking a moment to pause.
Yeah, just a few minutes to clear your head.
And there are lots of mindfulness exercises you can do.
Guided meditations.
You can find them online.
There are apps, websites, YouTube videos.
Yeah, there are tons of resources.
And they're usually free.
And they can make a big difference.
They can.
What about sleep?
Sleep is essential.
Because if you're sleep deprived,
you're not going to function at your best.
Your brain won't work proper.
You'll be foggy. You'll make mistakes.
So how much sleep should people be aiming for?
Most adults need around 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night.
Okay, so that's a good starting point.
Yeah, and try to be consistent with your sleep schedule.
Go to bed and wake up around the same time each day.
Even on weekends.
Yeah, that helps to regulate your body's natural sleep-wake cycle.
It does.
What about nutrition?
Nutrition is also really important.
Because food is fuel.
It is, and your brain needs the right fuel to function properly.
So what kinds of foods should people be eating?
Well, you want to focus on whole, unprocessed foods.
Fruits, vegetables.
Whole grains, lean protein.
Healthy fat.
And avoid sugary drinks and processed foods.
Yeah, those things will give you a quick energy boost.
But then you crash.
Yeah, and they're not good for your overall health.
So eat for sustained energy.
And what about exercise?
Exercise is a great way to relieve stress.
Yeah, it gets those endorphins going.
It improves your mood.
And it can help you sleep better.
So try to get at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity exercise most days of the week.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be anything too strenuous.
No, just a brisk walk.
Or a bike ride.
Swimming,
anything that gets your heart rate up.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important to be kind to yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
IELTS prep is a journey.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
And there will be ups and downs.
So don't be too hard on yourself if you have a bad day.
Yeah, everyone makes mistakes.
It's part of the learning process.
And remember to celebrate your successes.
Big and small.
Yeah, give yourself credit for the progress you're making.
Because it's important to acknowledge your achievements.
And it helps to keep you motivated.
It does.
So we've talked about managing stress, getting enough sleep, eating well, exercising, being kind to ourselves. Any other tips for well-being?
I think it's also important to be aware of the signs of burnout.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Because if you're not careful, you can push yourself too hard.
And then it's counterproductive.
Exactly. So if you're feeling
Makes
exhausted,
you not enjoy the process anymore.
if you're feeling cynical or detached,
Yeah, those are all signs that you need to take a break.
you need to recharge.
So don't be afraid to take a step back.
Yeah, it's not a sign of weakness,
It's a sign of self-awareness.
but it's essential for long-term success.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about the different types of motivation, setting up a productive study space, building a support system, prioritizing well-being.
And all of these things are interconnected
Yeah, they all work
to
together.
help you stay motivated.
Now let's talk about some long-term strategies,
Okay.
because the IELTS isn't a quick fix.
No, it takes time and effort.
It's a commitment.
So how do you stay motivated over the weeks and months of preparation?
That's the big question.
It is.
Especially for beginners
Who are just starting out.
or still figuring things out.
Yeah.
So what are your top tips for long-term motivation?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to track your progress
Okay, why is that so important?
because it gives you a sense of accomplishment.
Okay.
It shows you that you're actually moving forward,
Even if it's slow.
even if it's just a little bit at a time.
So how do you track your progress?
It could be as simple as keeping a journal, like
Okay.
using a spreadsheet, or even just making notes in your textbook.
Just something to visually see how far you've come.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Another helpful tip is to break down the syllabus.
Oh yeah, because the IELTS syllabus can look pretty daunting,
It's a lot of information. So instead of looking at it all at once,
which can be overwhelming.
break it down into smaller chunks.
Okay.
Focus on one section at a time,
One topic at a time.
one skill at a time.
Okay, so it's like those small, achievable goals we talked about earlier,
Exactly. It's the same principle.
just applied to the bigger picture.
Right.
Okay, what else?
Don't forget to reward yourself
Oh yeah, that's important.
because you need to celebrate your success.
Big and small.
So when you reach a milestone,
When you finish a section,
when you achieve a goal,
give yourself a treat,
do something you enjoy.
take a break,
Watch a movie.
go for a walk,
Anything that makes you happy.
because it's important to have things to look forward to,
Keeps you motivated.
and it makes the process more enjoyable.
It does.
What about visualization?
Visualization can be a powerful tool.
So how can people use visualization to stay motivated?
Imagine yourself taking the IELTS
Okay,
and imagine yourself doing well.
okay,
Imagine yourself feeling confident and relaxed.
okay,
Imagine yourself getting the score you need.
okay. So it's like creating a mental picture of success.
Exactly. And the more you visualize it,
The more real it becomes.
and the more likely you are to achieve it.
That's interesting.
It is.
And I think it's also important to be patient,
Oh, yeah. Patience is key.
because IELTS prep takes time,
It does.
and your progress might not always be linear.
There'll be ups and downs.
You might have some breakthroughs,
and some plateaus.
but the important thing is to keep going
Don't give up.
and to adjust your study plan as needed.
Exactly.
So if you're struggling with a particular section,
Spend more time on that.
find different resources.
Get some help from a tutor.
Don't be afraid to adapt.
And remember that everyone learns at their own pace.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong way to do this.
As long as you're making progress.
That's what matters.
And one final tip for long-term motivation,
Okay.
establish a consistent study routine
Oh yeah, that's so important.
because consistency is key.
So even if you can only study for 30 minutes a day,
Do it every day
make it a habit.
because those small, consistent efforts will add up over time.
So it's like building a muscle.
Yeah, the motivation muscle.
And the more you use
The
it,
stronger it gets.
great analogy.
It is.
So we've covered a lot of ground
I
today.
have.
We've talked about understanding motivation, creating a productive study space, building a support system, taking care of your well-being, and using long-term strategies to stay motivated.
We've given you a lot to think about.
We have.
And hopefully some practical tips that you can use.
So to wrap things up,
Yeah.
what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I think the most important thing to remember is that motivation is a skill.
Okay.
It's not something you either have or you don't.
It's something you
You
develop.
can cultivate it.
You can strengthen it.
And the more you practice it,
The better you get at it.
just like any other skill,
That's a great point.
and it's never too late to start.
So even if you're feeling unmotivated right now,
Don't worry.
you can change that.
You can turn things around.
And we hope this deep dive has given you the tools to do just that.
We do.
So as you continue on your IELTS journey,
Yeah.
we encourage you to think about one small change you can make
Today.
to your study routine.
Or your mindset.
That will give your motivation a boost.
What will that be?
That's a great question for all of us to reflect on.
It is.
And for those of you who found this helpful,
Yeah.
stay tuned for future deep dives.
Or we'll explore other aspects of IELTS preparation
And we'll continue to provide you with the tools and strategies you need
to succeed.
on your IELTS journey.
We'll be here to support you every step of the way.
Thanks for listening.
And good luck with your studies.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.